Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is taking a look at After Effects and getting started in it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up After Effects here for you. So you're just going to type in here, After Effects, and you'll see it come up right here, and you click on it. This is probably going to open on my other screen. So as we're waiting here, one thing you're going to want to do with your files is you're going to want to set up folders in your videos. I think you're going to find that the files can get pretty complicated. It links just like InDesign, or you may have seen that in After Effects or in Illustrator, where it was like a linked file was missing. Okay, when you open up, you can come into this screen right here, and you can see you can new project or open project. I actually had built a project, and then I locked my computer up because I was trying to record the screen, play a video, and I was in After Effects, and it just completely locked me down. So let's go ahead and go to new project, and I want to point out some things. So even though you set up a new project, you're not ready to start making a video yet. Like, you haven't set your composition yet. There's two different ways you can set your composition. The first one is a new composition. We'll talk about that one in a bit. Or you can do new composition from footage. So After Effects is really good at changing existing video. Okay, so you can take existing video and do things with it, like stuff that was shot out of a camera, or maybe it's something that you animated before, or you can just do a whole new composition. We're going, like, if you do this new composition, it's going to bring it in at the frame rate and the aspect ratio that it was shot in. Okay, but I think we need to go from new composition and talk a little bit about what's here. First thing you want to do is you want to give your composition a name. So I'll call it Troy, and then you have like basic, advanced, or 3D render. You also have some presets here. We'll deal with these later on. We're going to stay in basic for right now. You have all your different screen sizes. So like, you can, in frame rates. So if you're like in 720, that's old school style TVs. 1080 will be the new widescreen format that we have for TVs. I know it's not new to you guys, but it still is to me. And then you can pick your frame rate. So it depends on what you're doing. If you're using existing footage, you're probably going to want 29.97 frames per second. If you're doing a pure animation, then you're probably going to want 24 frames per second, which is what I have it set up on. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Well, I'm not going to click OK yet. You can also set custom widths and heights. So if, say, you were doing for an iPhone, you can go look that up and set those heights. You also can change the type of pixels you're using. We're going to go square pixels here. That's what most screens use. But occasionally when you're doing like a video board, they will have different types of pixels, and you need to know how to change that so it fits it. You can tell it like what resolution you want it to come out as. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You can also set your starting time code and your end time code, as well as what your background is. So at this point, let's go ahead and click OK and see what we get. We just get a black screen, right? There's nothing on it. Okay, a little bit about the user interface. You have your menus up here. I'm on my menus. And if you click on those, they're going to have some options. Some of them grayed out because you don't have the right things set to do that. So when they're grayed out, it's usually you skipped a step. You need to go look it up. So these are your menus. Up here's your toolbar. So let me get off that. Up here's your toolbar. Your toolbar is also where you can change like how your setup looks. And the rest of all this stuff are panels. Okay, so you got your composition panel. This is what's going to show on the screen. If you roll your mouse in and out, it'll zoom in and out, but you can also change those there. You can also change it to where it's a clear format, so you don't have anything on the black background. So we had a black composition there, right? What if I was putting this on top of another video? I wouldn't want that black composition. I'd want it off. So you can change that there. We'll talk about this other stuff later on. And then down here you have your timeline. Okay, so your timeline is like right now I don't have anything in there yet. So even though I started a composition, I don't have any stuff in it. So there's really nothing to do yet until I get that. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can just go to a tool and click and hold and draw out a text box. So I'm going to write my name here. Or you can go layer, new, and you can pick the type of layer you want, and you'll get more familiar with those. I'll go ahead and hit text, and it created me a new text layer. I don't want that text layer, so I'm just going to hit delete on my keyboard. So if you need to delete a layer, you just click on it and hit delete on your keyboard. All right, let's talk about, over here you have some more panels. These are kind of commonly used. I work in the default kind of range a lot, mostly because it gives me my effects and preview, but you can set up your own workspace if you want. This one here where it's got the project and the effects control, these seem to be pretty smart, but you can dock those in so that they're docked and you can switch between them. All right, now let's come down to my composition layer, or my composition panel down here. And I want to point a few things out. All these things up here, they have a meaning, and we'll get into those later, and you can do some parenting here. But the big thing, you got an eyeball that turns you on and off, and you also have a lock button. So if you're finding you're grabbing hold of some layers that are below and you need to lock them, just go ahead and click that lock. Okay, also, you got this drop-down menu, and it's going to have some other drop-down menus in there. This little clock means that you're setting a keyframe. Over on your timeline, you can zoom in and out. So like here, I'm per frame. So if you see that F, that means per frame. Otherwise, it's in seconds. So suppose I wanted to do something with this text. So a couple different ways you can do that. You can go select if I want it to just move up, I'll hold my shift button down on my selection arrow and pull down. So this is where I want it to start. Okay, so on my keyframe at the beginning of the composition, I'm going to click there. And suppose I want it to take 2 seconds to come up. Okay, another way you can move things is you can come over here on the Y coordinate and I can move it up. So I can get that right in the center and set it there and call it good. And what will happen now, as you see, it's going to split it all up and make it move. Or if you want to see it like in how it's going to run, you just hit the play button up on your preview over here. And you can do that by clicking on the preview and it'll open up and show you I didn't mean to do that. If you ever get out into something like that, you can click those 3 dots and click reset to save layout. Okay, so I did that one. Let's go ahead and add a rotation in. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. So I don't want any rotation until it gets to this point. And then we'll go about a second in. And you have 2 different things on your rotation. You can do it the number of times you want it to rotate. So I'll do 1 there. Or you can rotate it to an angle. So now if I back up and go preview and hit play, you'll see it'll come in and it'll rotate. And then you have things like opacity or scale. You can change your scale, from 100% to 200%, whatever percent you want. Or if you do opacity, that'll make it disappear. So if you wanted it to fade away, you just set a keyframe and start it at 100 and fade it to 0. Or move your timeline. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of this. Real quickly, how you save something is you got to go up and you got to go save as the first time. After you saved, you can just use save. One thing I'm going to tell you is that there's a pretty complicated number of files that go with this. I would suggest for every project you create a folder. You save your InDesign or your After Effects project in there, and you save your renders in there, and any assets that you use within that. So say you created a character in Photoshop and then you wanted to bring it into After Effects, you would want that asset in your folder. Okay? If you ever have to switch computers or hand it off to somebody else to do some work in your workflows, that's just a smart way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the starting here, and I want to replace this file that I started earlier that my computer locked up. So I'm going to hit save. Now here's the thing. If you send that file to somebody, just the After Effects file, they're going to open it up, and any assets that you added to it are not going to be there. They'll just disappear. It's going to tell you a broken link. It's going to give you one of those bar screens that you see on old TVs where it's just got a bunch of colors and nothing there. And also for the lay people, for people who aren't doing the animation that just want to see the video, they won't be able to see it. They won't be able to open it. So we always have to do an export on this. And there's a couple different ways to export it, and it depends on what you're doing as to which way you're going to do it. So I'm going to do File, Export. And you got two things. You got add to Adobe Media Encoder or add to Render Queue. If you're doing something where you want a clear background so that you could put this over the top of video, how you would export that is this way. You go to the add to the render queue, and notice it opened up something here. I can still get back to my composition going here. In your output mode, you would go here, and if you do a QuickTime video, that's going to allow you to have a clear background. We did stingers for our broadcast. Stingers are just things that go between transitions. We had the cat would zoom in, like the cat would get bigger on the screen until it filled the screen as it was rotating out before it switched to the next camera input. So if we were using two cameras and I was going from camera 1 to camera 2 and I had that stinger on, we'd do that. To do that, we would use the PNG sequence. So it just makes a whole bunch of PNGs, and then in your computer, when your switcher, just run it. Like I said, if you want an alpha format on your export of your video, you'll use QuickTime. This is not how most of your exports are going to go, though. Most of them are going to be like this. You can add to Media Encoder. A Media Encoder takes a little bit to open up. I'm waiting for it to open up right now. You've used Media Encoder before, but it does take some getting used to. I mean, first thing you want to look at, like, what type do you want, right? And you can change the type here. Most of the time we're going to use H.264 because I want MP4s. They transport really well, and they do pretty well. I've actually got an extra one on here, so I'm going to get rid of Troy. That was one I did earlier. And I'm going to go ahead and hit play. I wonder if I set where I save it. Right here you can see where it is. It's After Effects Troy. AME, Troy, Final. Okay, let's go see if it's there. If I go to Videos, starting in After Effects, and it's going to be in this folder here is where your final product is. I would play that, but it's going to lock my computer up. Do know that when you do complicated animations, that sometimes the first time you open them in Adobe Media Player, they'll hitch a little bit, but then after they play through, they're just fine. Okay, so yeah, this would be one that anybody could open, an MP4. These files, just people with After Effects can open them. So I don't want, unless I ask specifically, I don't want these files turned in. I only want these files turned in. Okay, now, kind of what you're going to do from here is I'm going to go ahead and do a new project. And I'm not going to save that one. I probably should, but I'm not going to. And we're going to go over here to Learn. And we're going to do these first three lessons. And when you get done, I want you to export this one and turn them both in. Okay, so turn those both in as MP4s. And then, so those two are getting started with visual effects and learning the basics. And also After Effects Overview. So you can just click on Get Started, and it's going to open the little thing up. And when you've worked through that and you understand that, you click Next. And when you understand that, you click Next. This next one, I'm going to go ahead and continue here and get back up to this one. So it's going to ask you if you want to save. So sure, save. We'll call this first footage. Okay. It says click New Composition in here, so I'll do that. And oh, no. And the new composition footage, and they're going to have the footage here for you. Now, you want to hold your control button down and select both of them because it's hard to get back to otherwise, just because of where they have it saved. And go ahead and click Import. And we'll go ahead and click OK. And notice it's going to give me something here. It's going to give me some footage with some text on the top of it. A couple things about the timeline. You can shorten the length of a certain segment of it by coming out here and grabbing. So at this point, the APeak thing will only show for 1 second and it's going to disappear. If you need to lengthen that, you can do that too with still images. If you have motion images, it won't. You can also come in here and click and hold on it and change where it comes in at. So if I wanted to like start panning, right, we're starting to pan and then my footage to come in, you can. You'll work through this. It'll tell you whether you have success down here or not. So work through this tutorial. And then when you're done, export this as MP4 and then go on to the one where you're going to add rain footage to a scene. That's all for today. If you have any questions, make sure you ask.